Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show. This week there's a new Nissan. We hear about another new Nissan. I drive a very ridiculous SUV, and there's a lot of supercars being introduced. But first, a word from our sponsor. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you order the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love. A brand new SUV it's kind of interesting because I went to the event for this, and it's potentially the most forgotten about SUV has suddenly like jumped to the forefront with these changes. It's a strange transformation, but the Murano's been on market more or less for a decade without any real big change. And I mean, you can argue it's been that way since it was introduced in 2002 without any big change. It just got a little swoopier, but it was the same 2x2 formula with the 3.5 liter V6 and, sporty pretensions and a two-row SUV. Well, I guess the presentation explained that I guess sort of the audience is maybe changing or maturing. And with this one, they went on and on about elegance, sanctuary-like experience. Like, this is 100% push to be premium, and they've kind of stepped away from sport. It's the best explanation is, even in the press release, the mention about the powertrain was the last paragraph in the whole thing. So,
okay,
it's not like it's well, I mean, it's up to you if you think it's worse or not, but the V6 is gone and it's replaced by the 2-liter VC turbo. So the one that's in the Altima and popping up in other places like the QX60.
yes.
So here it makes 241 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. So that's down 19 horsepower, but up 20 pound-feet. So, I mean, it's the same. And I've said in my video in the review, I'll trade horsepower for torque pretty much any day within reason, because that's going to be more usable, especially a turbo. But like besides it being buried at the bottom of the press release, the dual tailpipes still exist, but they're hidden behind the bumper, and it rides much higher. It's got 8.3 inches of ground clearance, which is almost an inch and a half taller than the old one. And then inside, it's just full of like soft touch and quilted leather on the Platinum. So they even said like it's punching a level higher, and it kind of had a lot of us wondering, so is this like the new QX50? Like where does it sit in the lineup? Because you're encroaching on Infinity territory almost, and it's got not nearly the same design language as the Kicks that I recently drove, but you can see sort of where they're going with these vehicles.
Yeah, I see some Kicks resemblance.
And Armada.
And Armada, and in the back I do see some Infinity influence. So it slots in between Rogue and Pathfinder in terms of size. My guess is that it would... Yeah, and so my guess is that price-wise, it would be closer to a Pathfinder because it's more premium and aiming higher. Like, I guess we'll find out down the road.
Yeah, not like the Murano was low price, so
no,
it does they can't put it higher than the Pathfinder, but it might be because of the equipment in it. But
yeah, so this segment is not a big one anymore. The larger 2-row SUVs has always been kind of a niche, and I don't know. I mean, I thought the Aria essentially did this job, but I guess not everyone...
looks a lot. Oh, sorry. This looks a lot like the Aria too. Like,
yeah, and
the double takes some angles.
But I get that not everyone wants an EV, and so you do this. I have reservations about that engine because there have been some reliability concerns so far. But okay, I mean, well, I'm curious.
The best news I take out of it is the QX and now this have all-wheel drive paired to that, so there's no more excuse that the Ultima can't get all-wheel drive with the turbo.
But the Ultima's going to be dead in a year anyway.
Send it out with a bang, Nismo. Bring back the Ultima Nismo.
I will say, you're talking so much about how it's not really sporty and it's meant to be more luxurious. I do really appreciate any brand that does that because not every car needs to be sporty. So on that alone, I'm cautiously optimistic because I like a car. I mean, like the Aria. The Aria isn't particularly sporty, and I think that's a good thing. So okay,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, with the area we've kept saying it's like an SUV that just happens to be electric. It's not designed, and that it's great you brought up that point because I even thought that and said that at the event. Um, when the Murano came out, it was like sort of the first. Who cares about utility? This is a sporty SUV, like because it
from the
right now,
mainstream.
yeah, like this was in 2002 where you still had like body on frame Explorers and stuff. Like it was, and I remember, and its looks were like almost show car like back then. But
Mhm.
since that, like 22 years later, there are so many SUVs that are dedicated to sport, especially in the luxury, but even in the mainstream, like the STs from Ford and stuff. That like you said, it's a niche segment, and you need to find a niche. Ford's had it with the Edge, I think sort of the ST, but they're kind of giving up on that.
Edge is
Subaru's
dead.
had it with the Subaru's had it with the Outback forever. Toyota's tried so many times to be like the hybrid two row and with limited success. I mean, they're trying again. So maybe Nissan said, you know what, let's be like a
Yeah.
Buick Volvo competitor, but from a larger dealer network. I don't know, but yeah, I obviously haven't driven it, but seeing it, I mean, there's some mainstream bits still. It's not pure
Yeah.
luxury inside, like lower body plastics, but the stuff you see and touch is nice.
Okay. Cool.
And while there, we had a roundtable discussion, and we saw some other stuff I can't talk about, but we had a roundtable discussion, and the point was brought up, and it kind of was confirmed that the Rogue is going PF next year. I mean, a lot of us knew it was at some point, and we figured with like a 26 new model, but it just got refreshed this year, and I think it probably has another 2 years. People don't seem to flip their vehicles as often as they used to,
Yeah.
so
And
they
this was new
didn't.
for 21, the Rogue.
Yeah, and refreshed for 24,
5. Or
5?
24.
No,
Yeah.
4. Yeah,
24.
and
Yeah.
25 will get the hybrid, and I would guess it'll be a 26 still. Before they reach, I could be wrong, but anyway, they didn't get into specifics, but it's pretty obvious it will have what the Outlander has, and that's something that everyone's been saying since day one. Like if you put that in the Road, you got such a good package, especially going up against like RAV4 hybrids and CRV hybrids. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. My only concern would always be price. And I wonder if it's going to just pull the Outlander's powertrain wholesale, or if it's going to pair the plug-in aspect with
The three
the
cylinder.
the three-cylinder.
That's actually a good question. Yeah, because I know they used to have a 2.5, but it's not that 2.5. But
Hmm. Yeah.
I would assume, especially since this model life is limited, that it's probably going to be the whole Mitsubishi. But maybe that's maybe why they didn't get into it. But we'll wait
Yeah,
and see.
yeah.
All right, stepping up a scale. The 911 GT3 is all new for 25, and Porsche rarely uses their model names, year numbers when they introduce cars, but
Well,
I assume this is 25.
that's because they release them globally, and Europe doesn't do this silly like here's a 25 midway through 24.
Yeah.
Europe just calls it by the name or by the year that it was released. So I think yeah.
So it's got
Okay.
refresh styling, and some of the go fast bits are a little go faster. But the big news is in the street model, which I think they call the Touring, correct?
No, so they're both like street. Touring is just the package that removes the rear wing.
No,
And does a few.
I don't mean like the other one's racetrack. I mean the one that's like more meant for street. Like you said, Rue's rear wing is not meant for people that are going to track it
Yeah,
regularly.
it's a little, it's like fractionally, yeah, softer.
So it gets a rear seat. So now you can punish rear seat passengers with the stiff suspension.
Because that was always a strange thing with the Touring. I drove one a few years back, and it's like, yeah, I don't get a rear seat, but it's supposed to be like a little friendlier. This also means that the facelifted 911 finally gets a manual again, because currently none of the models have it. So that's good. I mean, we figured this was going to be the case, right? Remember 10 years ago when Porsche released a GT3 and they're like, yeah, no more manual, and people freaked out. So now they're going to keep it until I imagine people stop buying them.
Yeah.
I don't know. This, you can't do much with the GT3. Like the regular 911, we didn't see a whole lot of change. We saw the big change with the GTS, with it becoming a hybrid. you can't do much with this because that 4-liter is already at its limits. It's still producing the same 502 horsepower because it's not a turbo, so you can't be like, we're just turning up the boost a little bit. It's amazing that they've got it through emissions controls so many years in a row.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can make more, but you need to suck in more air and fuel and send more out, and then there goes your emissions. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always make more power, but not clean power. I think if Porsche wants to get a little buzzer on the manual, like they did years ago, like you said, when they first introduced it, 8-speed manual. Add another cog there. Be the first of the 8-speed. They were the first of the 7, from what I remember.
They were the first of the 7, and the weird thing is this doesn't use that.
Yeah, because then Chevy followed, and then they don't have it either anymore.
Yeah, this has a 6.
8-speed.
Double
H here.
So many H's. Yeah, and so I guess this also now gets a Weissach package, and there's a lightweight package, which is basically the Weissach, but for the touring. Excuse me, which is funny because the touring is supposed to be the friendlier, street-oriented version. And then the Weissach package is the more extreme carbon and everything package for the GT3. And then you can get the lightweight, which is Weissach for the touring. And I'm like, so you're taking your softer car and making it a little harder edge, but not as hard edge as a regular GT3. GT3s are a whole special thing, and Porsche will sell every single one that it makes, and people are going to be on wait lists. And it's fantastic. And I should also point out, it is an amazing drive, based on the previous one. So I'm sure this one will be too. But
I honestly think it's something as trivial as that wing. People want everything on the GT3, but they don't want the wing. I mean, Subaru had that same thing. Remember the last STI, you could get the no wing or the small lip, and they thought that was for people who wanted it more affordable, but they found out a lot of even track people want it because they're just embarrassed by the giant wings. So
yeah,
you never know. All right, moving on. Talking ridiculous. So I drove the Hummer EV, and not just any EV, but the Hummer EV 3-motor Omega, which is basically their launch edition, and it comes in this cool matte blue paint, which is cool. It's a very subtle vehicle. You don't get any attention driving it. No one notices it parked in your driveway. It's jacked up to extract mode. It's very subtle. It doesn't sit taller than my house. It made our Crosstrek look like a K car, it's so tiny beside it. But so it's one of those vehicles where the engineers, I think, were just given a blank slate, said, hey, how crazy could you make an EV as an off-roader? And they went nuts. And it's got a 212 kilowatt hour battery pack, roughly, at least. I mean, from my calculations of when I charged it, which is Jim even says it's basically 2 battery packs sandwiched on each other. I mean, that alone weighs not much less than 4,000 pounds, which is why the Hummer weighs almost 9,000 pounds. 830 horsepower. And in real life, not the way Jim rates the torque. It's at 11 to 1,400 pound-feet of torque. Depends on which conversion philosophy you use. It has the WTF mode, watts to freedom. And if you engage that, it has the whole theater and production like Mercedes launch control in their EVs, or it starts shaking the car and it starts making noises. And I thought, oh, cool. And then you let go of the brake. And there is nothing I've experienced like that and probably ever will again, because it can do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. And I honestly think that's conservative. Conservative if you're on a drag strip and you can hook the tires up. The biggest problem is you have 3 tires. You have 4 all-terrain tires that are 305 that have 9,000 pounds on them. And when you do the launch, the nose points to the air, and I don't mean slightly, you almost can't see in front of the vehicle. It squats so much because there's no sport mode. It's a big off-road, and it's put itself in the lowest mode, like the entry mode. And that's the only time it'll let you drive in that. And all 4 wheels just break loose, and it's a matter of which one will grab traction first. I mean, I did it twice. Both times I backed out very fast because I don't want to be the next guy that's viral on TV because I hit something trying to launch a car.
Yeah,
which we'll see lots of, I think, with these vehicles next spring. Now that they're back in full production and they've got the facility up and running. So, it's ridiculous if you think of it as an EV, and it's ridiculous if you think of it as an SUV. But if you think of it as a toy in the same way a Lamborghini is, a Ferrari, um, the new Land Rover Defender Octa, even the G-Wagon, none of those are practical, none of them make sense, but people want them and they're hilarious to drive, and that's this.
Or the Jeep 392 for that matter.
Yeah, like it's just if I had the almost 200,000 Canadian, I think about 140 American, this isn't the first thing I'd buy, but I wouldn't fault someone that has the means to do that they picked this. I mean, I get it. It's each their own. It's not like it's a terrible vehicle. It's just ridiculous.
I will say the interior does not measure up to the sticker.
No, but I mean, a lot of those vehicles at that point don't. I mean, the Jeep 392 is not much cheaper. Look at that interior. It's
True.
At that point, it's about the engineering.
True.
And being crawling over Miatas and parking lots. All right, so we didn't drive this, but one of our freelancers, Chase, did. It was the new WRX TS, which came out right after the TR, which is so confusing.
I was just gonna say, where does this fit? Which two-letter acronym WRX that launched this year?
So like back in the day, there was STI and there's WRX, and the TR bridged the gap kind of as track ready, where it was basically WRX with nothing in it, so you could modify it up for track use. The new one is not quite that. It's better equipped, but it's still supposed to be the higher performer. And like we drove it, it's very stiff and it's got crazy brakes and
good seats.
This one, the TS, from what I gather, it kind of splits the difference between that and a WRX. So it gets the brakes without as stiff a suspension. And it's funny though, because when we compared it to the GR Corolla, we said it's the softer, more mature version. Now there's a softer, more mature version of it. So
yes, but was there really that much clean air between the WRX and the WRX TR that Subaru was like, you know what people need? This in the middle.
Yeah, because the last gen, they did eventually put the STI brakes on. Or maybe not quite, but they put the big calipers, and I said, like, that's the one to get. And that's sort of what this is. It's like it's more of a regular WRX with the big brakes. So why didn't you just make that an option or put that on the top regular trim?
All right. Well, I mean, so Chase says right here that it's the one you want. So I guess it is the ideal blend.
Easier to drive on the street. Got all the braking power, which I've said many times has always been a Subaru, especially WRX, weak point. He had hot laps with Scott Speed, I think, was there, and he said like the brakes stood up. So it's I mean, it works for Ford, right? Like seems, and the Bronco and the Mustang have a different trim version, whatever, every month it seems. So
true. And we were saying earlier, I think on the last episode, that WRX sales are not doing so well. So give people more choices, and maybe it'll improve.
Maybe. So moving on to a completely different realm of sports car, Ferrari introduced the next, the next F car. I know there was no F60 or F70, but
yes, there were.
I want to say they were just called Enzo and LaFerrari.
Yeah, but Ferrari has confirmed this at this point, essentially, by calling this F80. It is acknowledging that those two were supposed to be
F60
multiple of 10.
Yeah, I mean, like it's the everything we know about cars we throw at a car basically. Like the F40 was the old 288 GTO engine shoved into a crazy car, and then the F50 was not far off an F1 car for the streets, and so on and so on. So this thing is ridiculous. It has over 1,000 horsepower, which seems to be the thing you got to do these days.
V6.
Yeah, well, turbo. That's
still a V6.
Some people are complaining about its looks or the way the powertrain is. I'm like, I like it. It's got a very kind of retro cool, although I will say it looks a little more Lamborghini retro than Ferrari retro.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I appreciate the black panel in the nose, because it's like the Ferrari, it has the deal with it meme sunglasses just as standard. That's just like what is on it. I know there's the Daytona tie-up, but I prefer that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it does have the shape and style of some of their 60s and 70s cars, but it's one of those things people complain now, but then they're gonna put this in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, like probably Charles Leclerc, just to tie it in, or Lewis Hamilton next year. And I think the performance that comes out of it is going to be pretty nutty. But we'll have to wait till then. and it's one of those cars. It's going to be insanely expensive, and it's only going to appreciate. So it's an investment.
And it's already sold out, I assume.
Oh yeah, sure. If you're like Ferrari's top collectors of collectors.
Yeah.
Trying to steal some of his thunder, though. The ZR1 was taken to the test track. Now, I'll do a quick little background. We didn't get to, but some media got to go for a ride in it at, I believe it was the Michigan Oval test ground that they have on GM. And they're doing about 205, 206 miles an hour. And everyone was saying it still had some left, which is pretty quick already. It's not as cool as it was like 20, 30 years ago, because like Hellcat Charger apparently did 200 miles an hour, but still. So GM took it to a much larger facility in Europe. I think it was in Germany, where 150 miles an hour is the middle point in the corner where you don't have to even steer. So you can get cars going faster.
Was it sorry, I can't remember the name of the I can't remember the name of the track now. Is it Esra Lane?
I don't
German?
know. I read it, but there's so many. But anyway, so yeah, the engineers went thinking we can hit 220, and as soon as they started doing some shakedown runs, they were like, "Oh, maybe we can do 230." And then Mark Rouse, who isn't, Royce, sorry, who's like not a test driver. I mean, he can drive, but he's like just a high exec at GM got in it and did 233 miles an hour on
like it ain't no thing.
Yeah, both directions, which like is your they said it 233 both ways, which means there's probably no wind, but that's crazy. Like this is a Corvette we're talking about. One you can go to the Chevy dealer and buy that's going to be, a fraction of the price of the Ferrari we just talked about, or anything else that could go 220, 230. I mean, it'll be expensive, but it won't be like $1 million.
No, and so like weirdly in my head, I don't know if you do this too, Mike, but I compare it to other cars with top speed records, because those don't seem to be as much of a thing anymore, except for Koenigsegg. And I think about the Sledgehammer, the Corvette, the C4 from the 80s that did 250 something. And that had less power than this, but also this has ridiculous downforce. Like this car can handle, as we've already seen examples of. And like, even though it can, straight out of the box, over 230 miles an hour. That is
like the Sledgehammer was a one-trick pony, and I don't even want to think of how terrifying that was at 250. Whereas this, you said, it's probably like you and I could get in, and well, I don't think we'll go that fast, but you probably 200 miles an hour, and you're like perfectly stable.
I'll offer. I mean, if someone wants to trust me doing that, I'll try.
But like I said, with the Ferrari, they'll put this into the hands of race car drivers. I mean, they already are, and it's going to set ridiculous records because GM has proven, even with the front engine Corvettes, when they go all in on the ZR1 with the tires and the downforce, like they're basically making race cars that are street legal. And how's this pass emissions? But whatever.
I'm fine with it.
I've always loved the high end Corvettes, and I can't wait to see this thing go to the ring. Because Mercedes just at that time.
Right? Yeah. And I don't know if I don't think this could beat the one, because the one is a race car. But I feel like this will get surprisingly close for a fraction of the price.
I think this will set it's hard. It feels weird calling it mainstream, but like the mainstream production, like out of like the 911s and the regular Ferraris, because like the F80, I don't really count as like, that's sort of like the
like a regular series production model. That makes sense.
And people say it's gonna be so expensive because the Z06 is already like 140, I think, in the US. So it's 180 in Canada to start. Like, so even if this doubles it and it's like 280 US, the performance it's doing, like nothing's in that bracket. So
and that's still cheaper than what Ford was charging for the GT a few years ago. And
awesome. So getting back to sensible cars, Subaru introduced its next generation hybrid for the Crosstrek in Japan next year. It's big news because we're not getting this, but the system is very much what we will be getting, and they've basically not confirmed, but we all know it's what the Porsche gets next year, and the Outback will be quickly behind it because those are the volume models. I mean, we may get the Crosstrek eventually, but they want to start with those. So it's a parallel, which Subaru's been needing. They've never really had. I mean, the plug-in, but this one anyway, it's in-house and it looks pretty good. They don't have any numbers or whatnot, but it has a 2.5.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and apparently that 2.5 has been tweaked a bit to make more power, and then you throw the hybrids. So this
Huh.
isn't, yeah, this isn't the XT for the Forester, but this will be the more powerful option for it, which is what I've been waiting for. Like more power in the Forester with even better economy. Like that
Interesting.
just speaks to Subaru. So we'll have to wait and see figures and numbers. But I saw pictures, and yeah, one of those systems where you can power the wheels with or without electricity. Like it can go pure electric or pure gas or hybrid,
Okay.
and it's all-wheel drive. So of course, the only thing is the
Mechanical?
battery in the well, yeah. Sorry, yeah. You mean like a drive shaft? Yeah, it still has that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like Toyota where it's like there's no power from the gas going to the rear axle.
No,
Okay.
just the Solterra does that, but that's a whole different sort of world with the
Yeah.
EV. But
Yeah.
looking at the battery pack and the motor, I'll be interested to see if they somehow still can call this symmetrical, because those who know, like symmetrical does not mean equal power to the wheels. It never has. It means equal weight balance side to side because the
Mhm.
boxer layout.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine the motor and the battery and everything are still perfectly centered, but who knows?
But
We'll
maybe.
see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up news. We will take a short break and come back with our question of the week. Picture this. You're in the garage, hands covered in grease, just finished tuning up your engine with a part you found on eBay. And you realize, you know what? I could use new brakes. So where do you go next? Back to eBay. You can find anything there. It's unreal. Wipers, headlights, even cold air intakes. It's all there. And you've got eBay guaranteed fit. You order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. Look, DIY fixes can be major. Doesn't matter if it's just maintenance or a major mod. You've got it, especially when things are guaranteed to fit. So when you dive into your next car project, start with eBay. All the parts you need at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love. All right, we've had a lot to talk about, and I know Colum and I are going to have a lot of F1 to talk about because it's been a couple weeks. So we will get to the question of the week now, and won't spend too much time here, but I just thought of this because I'm driving a 3-row, and next week I'm driving a 3-row, and I've been driving a lot of 3-row SUVs. So what is the best vehicle pick for a family of 5? I mean, it used to be a wagon, maybe one with the rear seat, and then the minivan was king, and then SUVs are king. And what would you say it is now? I kind of have, I'm going to cop out and say I have like 3 options.
Wow. Okay. Well, you should start then.
So, I mean, the absolute best for family of 5 is a minivan. It still is, bar none. And you can get all-wheel drive minivans. You can even get lifted ones with the Woodsman. Nothing beats the space the passengers get, the space of storage you get, how easy they are to drive. Yeah, they have a stigma, but I don't think the stigma's gone. You know how like whatever your parents liked is uncool? I think that's what happened with minivans for our generation. But I think the next generation's like, well, people thought they were uncool. They must be cool again.
If grandparents thought it was cool, then it's cool.
The amount of people in like middle and high school that listen to the same music I did is, and dressed like I did in high school. I'm like, what's going on? But anyway,
yeah,
that's a whole different topic.
Yes. So any minivan in particular then, or are you just saying?
Yeah. So minivan. I mean, obviously the Pacific is the nicest, but it's also a little pricey. So I haven't driven the hybrid Carnival. I know you have, but it's either that or I guess the Sienna, because again, I'm just basing this purely on the best way to shuttle 5 people. I mean, with the fuel economy, the space, the power.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say the Carnival is what popped in my head first since I drove it recently. The hybrid makes a ton of sense. I think in these situations too, like as nice as the Pacifica is, I think it's pricey. But it's even pricier if you get the plug-in hybrid. But the plug-in hybrid is so good if it works with your lifestyle, right? Like if you can plug it in at home and you do stuff throughout the week that never drains that battery, you're laughing. You're saving so much money by buying it. And it's also just really nice to drive around on electric power. But the other hybrids are also great for more of a rounded, who knows what you're doing throughout the week kind of approach than the Sienna or the Carnival, because the Carnival just has better road manners, but it's not as efficient as the Sienna. Yeah,
when you're talking about the Pacifica, like its price, especially with the plug-in, starts to get into the premium SUV, which is a problem with the mainstream SUVs. So if a minivan is absolutely off the table because of whatever reason, I would think one of them might be size. So if you want something slightly smaller that still can comfortably take people in the third row, the Santa Fe. The new Santa Fe is just so good. And it's a size smaller than the other 3 rows, but inside it really isn't. I mean, if you have all 3 rows up, you notice it in the cargo, but not like any of them outside of an Atlas has much space behind the third row anyway.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Because the power of publishing and recording at different times means that people will be listening to this after my review of the ID Buzz. That's my answer.
Yeah, and it's a minivan, it's an EV, it's everything. I mean, I haven't driven it, but
they really don't want to talk about an EV. Or sorry, they don't really want to call it a minivan. My bad.
well,
yeah.
Kia.
Yeah, but no, they gave us some research. I mean, it's internal research, of course, but still, they said for prospective buyers who they expect to actually be moving to an ID Buzz is largely SUV buyers. They said 3% of their prospective buyers are actually going to be coming from minivans. I guess that also has something to do with how popular minivans are on the market. But yeah, it's pricey. We're talking about pricey, which for the Pacifica. The ID Buzz starts where the Pacifica tops out, but it comes very well equipped as standard because of that price, and it has the most spacious third row like in the industry. Nothing else has a more spacious third row.
Well, I mean, it's a big box.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a commercial van, like a 12-passenger van.
Yeah. So like that's maybe my answer.
Okay,
I really enjoyed it.
So for the final part of this, my go-to answer for the who cares about the kids, shove them in there and let them deal with it, was always the Hellcat Charger. you have a decent sized back seat and you get to still have fun, but that's gone now. So I don't know what's going to take its place. I mean, I guess I could cop out to Hellcat Durango for this one last year, but
oh, it's not sold here. I was going to say M3 Touring.
Oh, yeah. There's just not many.
The RS6 Avant. There you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like a lot of, well, I guess the WRX still has the rear seat. A lot of the sporty cars are 2x2s. But yeah. All right. Well, that was it for that question. We're going to take another break, and when I come back, I'll have Colum on to talk about F1. And when you're watching this, you'll know what would have happened this week at Austin, but we don't. So we're going to make a lot of guesses and either look like geniuses or foolish. We'll see.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back. We have the F1 news and rumors back after a brief hiatus because, well, F1 took a unofficial fall break. We have Colum Wood back. There's actually been some interesting stories, and by the time you hear this, Austin will have happened, but we don't know what's happened yet, so we'll speculate on that too.
Hey, Mike. Hey, everybody. Yeah. I feel like, of course, I was in Monaco with all the drivers hanging out on vacation too.
You and Charles on your yacht?
Yeah, of course.
Vertical scope yacht. If you don't know, it's at least 65 feet.
Might look more like a canoe, but that's okay. So yeah, there's been lots going on. This whole adjustable floor thing has been a real interesting story in that sort of it came out and the rumors came so fast that it sounded like, again, basically that the story is that there's an adjustable floor on one of the cars. And basically the real advantage here is it allows the floor to be lowered or raised between qualifying and the races. So you can basically optimize your car for both. The sort of, I don't know, my assumption was, well, it's probably McLaren because they're kicking everybody's butt. And then it turns out, no, it looks like it was Red Bull. And they were saying they weren't actually using it, but it was possible to be used. I don't know. I mean, if you've got it, I'm sure you're using it. But it certainly doesn't bode well for Red Bull's chances of the race this weekend. If they were using tricks and still doing that poorly, then it could be a rough weekend for them.
What in kicking you all the way down? I mean, they're not doing terribly. They're still up there, but compared to their previous, you're doing terribly, and you had some sort of advantage. So it was the actual floor. I thought I read it. It was like the wing that was going up and down, but I was confused. So.
No, I know. Yeah, I actually did like a deep dive into one of the stories. It was very sort of like mechanical about it, and so it's actually what they call it, like the T-bar, whatever. It's the first piece of the floor, really, right behind basically sort of very almost behind the wheel. So it's not the splitter on the front. That's like this is funny. Technically speaking, in Formula One terms, I think what they do refer to this as the splitter, but it's not the front wing. Like the front wing is a separate thing that's not involved here, but it's basically the piece of the floor that juts forward. That actually is what, sometimes they have rules where they talk about the planks on the bottom that wear, and they're like, it's what the plank is actually attached to. So, but it's basically the first part of the floor, and it controls a lot of what the air under the car is, and then a little bit of the air going over the car as it gets fed back. So if you can keep it, the real challenge was basically they could adjust it, presumably, and this would give you a huge advantage when your car is filled with weight, right? With all the gas in it at the start of a race.
Yeah,
so
lift it up when you're heavy and then put it down when you're light. Before we get into my conspiracy theory about that, wasn't Christian Horner the one way back in the day complaining about double rear diffusers and double floors on cars? Like, I guess he learned some tricks over the decades. But
he probably has. What's your conspiracy theory? I want to know.
Well, first off, I love their comment, like, oh, it's built into the vehicle, so we couldn't just take it out, but we have now. It's like, so wait, what? So this is like a new car?
Yeah.
But that quote was weird. But how you said for qualifying and racing, I'm wondering if it is one of those computer controlled automatic things where it was used during racing. In the corners, it drops way down. On the straights, it lifts up because the downforce pushes your car down. And remember, George got disqualified for his planks being too low. And if you watch racing, I mean, Red Bulls don't spark that much. So
they don't. No, they don't.
So it could have been happening all the time, but I guess we'll find out this week. But this worse for them is, like, Austin's got a bit of everything, but there's some speedy corners, so this could affect them. I mean, I don't know. By the time this airs, I mean, it could have been a Verstappen Perez 1-2, but I wouldn't hold my breath that's going to happen.
I wouldn't either, right? So, but it'll be either way. I'm very excited. I'm happy just to have racing back. I always love the Austin race. It's funny. I was chatting with my wife because she basically smack talks all the U.S. races because she's like, oh, it's just more silly tracks and stuff like that. But Austin is a great track. I get smack talking Vegas or Miami, but this is a enthusiast track.
Miami, the parking lot and like overpasses, but yeah, like this one, it's designed to have good competition and passing, and you can pass. I mean, when NASCAR's there too, like it's an entertaining race. In Vegas, it's a street course, but at least they made it where you can pass it ton with all those straightaways. But this is a course though that's really designed for a well balanced overall vehicle, and I think Ferrari and Red Bull, I don't know, again, I could be wrong because this has already happened, but they'd be at a disadvantage. Ferrari seems to be a good straight, like high speed car, and Red Bull was handling better, but I don't see how Norris and Piastri don't do well here.
Agreed. I mean, they've just been killing it for the season. It's really going to be, this season's going to come down to last couple points, and if Red Bull can eke out some wins, or if Lando Norris gets a DNF somewhere along here, it could, the whole thing falls apart, right? Yeah, it's over. So it's like, which actually, it's weird because that really incentivizes him to be smart and not too risky driver, but everyone's going to kind of be that way. So
same with Max though, right? Like if he gets the DNF, that really changed. And there's a sprint this weekend, so there's more points on the table. So if he can win twice, or like, imagine Max crashed out on the sprint and they can't fix his car.
Yeah,
and he can't. Like, he'd be done.
Yeah, then you lose sprint points and you lose the real race points. Or we're just talking about on the before we hopped on here that it's so weird that the sprint happens and then qualifying happens, and so you're really disincentivized to take a risk during the sprint, because if you do and it burns you, then what if you can't do qualifying and for the real race, and then you wind up starting 19th or something? It's it's a risky situation. So
and we'll see what happens this weekend, and people know. But yeah, I predict, and we'll see if I'm right. Could be completely wrong, but I think Norris and Piastri will both do good. I won't even say which one will do better because they seem pretty even with their cars. And I think it'll be Mercedes that'll be the closest competitors, and then Ferrari, Red Bull will be mixing it up, driver dependent. Like Max will be there, and Perez will be down here somewhere.
yeah. Although I saw today that Perez is insisting still that he's not retiring, so we'll see.
And Christian is like I can't remember, yesterday, I think it was, saying they're desperately looking for answers. Like it's not like they're being coy or they did some updates in this like month or so we've had off. It's development period's over, basically. Budgets are done. There's very little you're doing to your car at this point. So yeah, speaking of that schedule, it's quite interesting because Austin's got, I was looking, trying to find the practices and whatnot, and there's Lucha Libre happening at the track. There's Globe of Death.
Always big Globe of Death fan over here. That sounds like the name of my band.
There's a lot of music there too. So like after the sprint qualifying, they need to get off track because it ends at 5:14 p.m. Because at 5:15, DJ Raquiqui, I think, starts before Globe of Death comes back. There's a lot of Globe of Death. Sting apparently is performing at 7:45. Wow. I'm assuming it's the singer, not the wrestler, but either could be interesting. Then the parking lots open at 8 a.m. because Lucha Libre is back at 10. Globe of Death. Oh, there's Der Kleinsteins at the beer garden. So I don't know if that's a band or just drinks. The fan field, I think, is where the music is. And there's the Gentleman Rogues and the Ugly Beats.
Wow.
Yeah. But it all wraps up Saturday at 7:45 with Eminem at a super stage. Really? Yeah, he's at the super stage, which no one else is. So
that could be the one. Remember, they talked a long time ago. They were actually giving people they were giving the opportunity to sell back your tickets because they basically were confident they'd sell them for more. And I think it's because they said there's some really big name act that's going to be there. So, I mean, I don't know if Eminem's the big act he used to be.
Still pretty big. He has a new album and it's doing pretty well. And this is also assuming Globe of Death wraps up in time and they're not delayed by Girl in a Coma, who play at the fan field before that. So.
Oh, good. I'm glad. This is all critical stuff.
Yeah, and after the F1 race, two friends play at the amphitheater. So if you're at that track, you got lots
to do. For me, I'm always these races are always strange because again, I'm used to, especially after all the European races over the summer, where everything happens crazy early in the morning, and I can wake up in the morning and watch the free practice one or something over a coffee. This is you're waiting for it to happen during the day. So. Which I guess is kind of convenient, but I'm just so used to all the other races that this actually seems less convenient to me for some reason. So,
completely unrelated. I will be not working for about an hour this afternoon. Just some personal business I need to attend to.
Well, personal news. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the Eastern time. Free practice at 1:30. So sprint. So at 4:30? No, 5:30.
No, it's 5:30. So after the workday, it'd be kind of nice. Yeah. But also there's a baseball playoff game. Man, it's too much going on. Speaking of things going on, we didn't talk about this because we weren't around last week, but Toyota out of nowhere suddenly said, "Hey, we're partnering up with Haas." It's sounds more like what Porsche was thinking of doing with F1. It's the name, not they're going to bring their engines. But the thing that's really interesting is the partnership is Toyota's GR or Gazoo Racing is going to help Haas with basically making the car and the team work. And then Haas's huge resources of marketing and whatnot from F1 is going to help GR's other racing series. Yeah. So it sounds like a good thing for Haas. And it kind of ruins our whole theory that Andretti would just buy Haas out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that to me, this is a smart way of Toyota stepping their toe in the water. I think it speaks to Toyota wants to get back in there. But if you're a smart business, which Toyota is, they would say, okay, let's try this out. Let's see if we can help Toyota to get Haas to get a little further. And then if they start actually being able to make improvements, you can convince, the powers that be at Toyota that, yes, let's actually buy this team and go all in. I could see Toyota wanting to be back. I mean, they love the big stages. I feel like it's coming. Interestingly enough, that I saw just a story the other day that to sort of, I think, help with this whole marketing exercise, right? Because obviously huge profile around F1 is that Toyota Racing, which is like what they call it in NASCAR, et cetera, will now be called Toyota Gazoo Racing North America, which I hate the Gazoo name, but the GR stuff sounds cool. GR Corolla, GR Supra, whatever.
GR86, GR Yaris in Europe.
Yeah. So we'll see, but it's obvious that they are trying to align everything in one direction to make sure that all the branding's correct. And why wouldn't you, right? Like make the most of, you're going to invest all this money in Formula One, make sure that has a trickle down effect on, you know, your products, your branding overall. You know, the kind of people who are buying GR Corollas, Supras, 86s are the kind of people who watch F1, right? So it's a good plan.
I love in the press release they really called out that in NASCAR wouldn't change what they run. Still Camrys in the Cup Series and the so-called Supra in the I don't know what they call the secondary series. It keeps getting different sponsors, but it's the most ridiculous looking Supra. It's like a Supra nose on a giant coupe sedan. But but back to F1, yeah, like it'll be interesting in 26. You're gonna have a Toyota branded car running a Mercedes engine. You're gonna have potentially an Alpine branded car running a Mercedes engine. Then you're gonna have Honda partnering up with
McLaren.
McLaren, yeah, no, not McLaren. Who are the I thought they're coming back with someone.
Yeah,
someone I'm not even thinking of.
Hard to keep it straight. McLaren's going. Honda's going Aston Martin, right? That's what they're going to be. So
yeah, Honda and Aston Martin. So which is weird because it's an Aston Martin with a Honda engine, and then there's going to be
Red Bull,
a full Audi, a full Mercedes, a full Ferrari, Ford with Red Bull, McLaren will probably still use Mercedes. Like, yeah, it's going to be just manufacturer crazy because half of them aren't even using their own engine. But I think that's part of it for Toyota. They saw Honda coming back and all the other manufacturers, and I think everyone knows like this 26 season could be like huge for F1.
Yeah,
with all the money pouring in.
It just keeps growing and growing, and the money keeps getting bigger. And yeah, I think, you know, anybody. It's funny. You would think that you would have sort of like jumped a shark from an investment perspective that we've reached our peak, but it seems like a lot of brands and stuff that don't want to get involved are thinking that there's still lots of room to grow and lots more money to make in F1. So they'll keep going.
It has sort of peaks and valleys. It seems that, and I think they're at a peak here internationally. They've probably never had. I mean, it's always been big in certain areas, but in the Middle East, Asia, North America, like it's at some levels that it never was. Partially because of all the races we get.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The whole Toyota maybe is going to buy the team out. I mean, it's like what happened with Mercedes, right? Like when Honda couldn't, like they're done. They were kind of done before they were done, and then Mercedes was unofficially like, we're going to buy you, but not yet. And then they had that whole year of Braun, which was pretty much the Mercedes car in development. But it could be similar. Like maybe next year, all of a sudden Haas is competitive, and then for 26, it's the Toyota team. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if the
or
better,
Haas Toyota maybe.
Yeah, the better Haas does, the more likely they are to get bought by Toyota, and which is a great incentive for a company if you're Gene Haas to be like, you know, I will now invest in this because I can make a pile of cash when Toyota buys the whole thing for me. And it's just they're properly incentivized. So I think it'd be interesting to see.
Two quick conspiracies before we wrap up. One, back to the Red Bull. It's funny that they're cheating or whatever, bending the rules car feature came out after two top people involved with that car left the team. How interesting. And the other one is we were looking at Haas's driver lineup next year and kind of like, this is odd, but obviously the drivers and the team knew what was coming from Toyota, and now it makes way more sense because we were like, why are these guys going to Haas? But
yeah,
sort of like the guys going to Sauber. I mean, we know that's because Audi's coming, but it now makes more sense. So
if
now Williams got to do something.
If you see Haas hire a Japanese driver, you know the buyout's coming. Like 100%.
Yuki switches over.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't mess around with that stuff. Like they know it for marketing purposes that in their home country, they're like, look, we're going to want to have a Japanese driver. It's no different than, like Audi was very sort of transparent. They wanted a German driver, right? They're like, it's like it helps sell it all through internally, marketing dollars in your own country. It gets a lot of people behind it. So that's smart.
And McLaren has a British driver, but kind of stops there.
Yeah.
And Haas has no American.
Well, I think we're running along here, but any quick prediction? Will Liam Lawson, he's back now, think he'll do better or worse than Tsunoda in this race?
I think he'll do worse, but he'll be closer than Ricciardo was recently.
Good stuff. I'm going to go with better. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just going to, he's super motivated. He's all hyped up. I could be wrong. Happy to be wrong, but we'll see if he can stand it. I liked him. I thought he was pretty solid before when he raced a couple there for Ricciardo. So, but it's good to see him in the seat. Sucks that we lost Ricciardo. Maybe Ricciardo will be like wandering around with a bull again or something, or riding a horse through the place. I'm sure he'll
be the new narrator for Drive to Survive next year.
I love it.
I got an even better question for you.
Oh.
Of the who will do better. will Lawson do better or Behrman?
What, like next year or?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a tough debate. Maybe let's go with Behrman, because Toyota throws all kinds of money at Haas and they actually start working. So there you go. I'll go with
Because
that.
I mean, I know Mercedes is looking to have a rookie too, but that may or may not be official. I mean, they're going to have a leg up, but I think those two sort of like which rookie's going to shine. Sort of like how we've talked many times how I'm having a mind blank of some of the good rookies recently that were on bad teams and they really shone through.
Yeah.
I'm making my point because Charles was like pretty much on Ferrari from the start.
Yeah, well, he did a stint at what, Sauber / Alfa Romeo, etc. So
yeah, I guess so. Lando's been McLaren, but he was on a terrible McLaren to start.
He was
developed with him.
Yeah.
I guess Russell's a good example. He was on Williams and he way overachieved for what the car was at the time, and he got up. So I wonder if one of these two guys will say like they stand out, and then like a Ferrari, Mercedes, or whoever, Red Bull's like, oh, you know what? Let's pick this guy off.
I think it's true. There's more talent out there than we realize. There's guys who probably deserve it who aren't getting a shot, and sometimes they'll run with it, and we'll see somebody just come out of nowhere and just shoot right to the top. So I always look forward to that happening. Somebody who you didn't expect becomes the next big thing. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We will be back next week and kind of unofficially starting into the home stretch. There'll be like 5 races left, and they're all pretty close together. So
they are. I think it's like 3 in a row and then a break, and then something like 3 in a row. Very close to that.
And
so
many of the next ones are in North America, which is nice for our time zone.
It is. So yeah, I'll be watching the hell out of it all. So
all right. Well, we will talk to you next week. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
All right, so to wrap up, we will take a look at what's next. So we'll get to you in a second, Kyle, because you've been home in like a month. I was looking at the Murano this week, as I mentioned. That was a good chunk of my week. And then I came home and picked up the Honda Pilot Trail Sport, which that's not a new trim for 25, but it did get a refresh, as did the whole line. So I'm actually taking it on some, I'm not going to take it off-road because no one is, but I took it to what I think a lot of its off-road will be. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, interesting. As anyone who's watching this can see, I am in a different location, and that's actually because I'm on vacation today. I'm visiting friends. Excuse me, because as Mike hinted, I have not been home since basically the last time we recorded. I went to Munich to drive the new M5 and M5 Touring from BMW. And in addition to that, I'll just say that the entire lineage of M5 was also there. Tough life. And then I took a very long trip to San Francisco to drive the new ID Buzz. And this will be publishing after the embargo, so you'll be able to read the story on AutoGuide.com, but we'll actually talk about it next week in full.
Sounds good.
And I obviously don't have a car, and I won't be picking one up till like next week when I finally get home.
Yeah, so next week, like I said, you're not home because you're going to another event. And I will be around, and I'm going to be doing a comparison with our freelancer and guest host, Jeff Wilson. We will be comparing 2 more 3-row midsize SUVs that have off-road pretensions, the Volkswagen Atlas Peak and the Chevy Traverse Z71.
Ooh.
So I haven't even been in any of the new Traverse, and I've been waiting because it's been right sized and I like the look of it. So I'm curious to see how it is.
I'm actually a little sad that I'm going to be missing it, but only a little.
And what are you driving next week after you get back? Well, where are you going? And then what are you driving?
Yes. So next week I am going to Austin to drive the Kia K4, which is going to be a little odd when it comes on sale here in Canada because, the naming convention, it's still just it's on its own because the K5 no longer exists here. And then I will be coming home and driving. I'll just be driving 2 little Porsches. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So for those who aren't up on Kia or maybe just the entire industry, what is the K4 replacing?
Oh yes, that's right. The K4 is replacing the Forte, and we will be getting a sedan and a cool little hatchback wagon. I'm not entirely sure where it sits, but cool.
It's interesting. Like I said, the K5 stuff, which replaced the Optima as the midsize. And midsize sedans, we've mentioned many times, like they're dying. Unless your name's Accord or Camry, you're probably not long for this world.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how strong the compact car has been, because you would think there's like, well, we did the whole comparison of sort of they used to be called subcompact, but they're bigger SUVs like the Crosstreks and the Corolla Crosses. I thought those would kind of wipe them out, sort of how the Foresters and RAV4s wiped out the midsize sedan, but it doesn't seem to be. It still seems like there's a market there.
I think it's because the small cars can still have such a massive economy advantage over the subcompacts. Like the subcompacts just, they don't get much better fuel economy than their bigger brothers. Whereas with sedans, like you're seeing 40 miles per gallon or more in models, and that's just like that's a huge savings. And also something like a Civic is enormous inside. So yeah, I think the compacts still have a life, and I'm very curious to see how the K4 takes it to cars like the Civic or the Mazda 3. But yeah, it'll be a nice low key, like plain everyday car that I get to drive. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I look forward to it too, because I've always liked that class. And the Elantra is good, the Civic's good, the Corolla is like, it's still one of the best values for fuel efficiency and price out there. I mean, it's not matching the other ones in terms of maybe equipment, but that's not its thing. It's like, if anyone's saying I need basic transport, I point them at the Corolla and I say, if you can swing at the hybrid, like that's the car that you could drive forever and it's not going to. So yeah, anyway, we will be back next week, and you can't talk about the K4, but you talk about some of the other cars you drove.
I can.
And you can talk about it?
Oh no, I can. I can talk about both the M5 and the ID Buzz next week, but not the M5 Touring.
And I will talk about an electric Fiat, and we'll see what else I got. So
sweet.
Till then, this has been the Auto Guide Show. We will see you next week, hopefully.
So long, everybody.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.